You have kind of question like that. Math, I love. This, I love.
Sanskrit that's later. Although there are some linguistic structures that we don't see in the classical period. None of those really complex compound words that you find later on in classical Sanskrit. So some people date it as early as maybe 1200. Some people date it as late as 1st or 2nd century of the Common Era. I don't think it's anywhere near that late. I think it's clearly pre-Buddhist because early Buddhist writers make reference to some of the ideas and verses in Gita. So we know that it's probably older than 500 BC. But we don't know. We don't know. It's attributed to Vyasa, the poet to whom the whole Mahabharata is attributed. The story is, of course, that I think it was Badrinath, where Vyasa was hanging out and Lord Ganesh was there, and he was dictating Gita to Lord Ganesh, who broke off his tusk and used that to write it down. So that's a wonderful story. You can actually see the portico at Badrinath, where supposedly Lord Ganesh took dictation to write down the Gita. Some scholars don't think it was that popular a work up until the time of Shankara. Shankara, we date him 788 to 820. And it was Shankara's very famous commentary, what we call a bhashya on the Gita. We kind of put Gita on the map. Whether or not it was a popular scripture before that, we really don't know. We don't have a lot of evidence of it being talked about in what literature survives from earlier eras. So some people think it's an interpolation into the Mahabharata because it doesn't advance the plot. Linguistically, it's pretty consistent with the rest. So I'm of the opinion that the same author did both works. So the frame of the story is we have a battle. It's a civil war. It's a fratricidal battle between two branches of a royal family. There's the Kauravas and the Pandavas. And I won't go too much into the background, but basically these guys had problems with gambling. Too bad there wasn't Gamblers Anonymous back in those days. Because basically what happens is the Pandavas lose their kingdom because of a dice game. And part of the deal was they were supposed to get it back. And the Kauravas said, we're in power, we're going to keep it. So a war is about ready to ensue. And this takes place on a battlefield called Kurukshetra. And this is usually interpreted as mystic symbolism. It's not so much that we need to find a historical place called Kurukshetra. Where is this battlefield? It's within our own hearts. It's the eternal struggle for us to know what we are to do and to struggle against lower tendencies and not let them rule our lives. So what we have back in the palace, we have the blind old king Dhritarashtra. And there at his court is a seer, a clairvoyant seer by the name of Sanjaya. And we're going to see in the very early part, as Sheila's mother chants, Dhritarashtra is going to say, dude, what's going on out in the battlefield? He didn't really call him dude. And Sanjaya then is the one who relates the story. So this is the frame of what we get. Now, as we move into the first chapter, we're going to have references made to all sorts of heroes. I'm not going to spend a lot of time as we go through the first chapter talking about who they are and things like that. For those of us who are Westerners, these characters are as much a part of the culture as the Star Wars characters are for us Americans. So you talk about Yoda or Darth Vader or Luke Skywalker. Everybody immediately knows who they are and the stories around them. So in Hindu culture, I think it's still a big part. Any of you who were raised in India, Deepa, you were raised over there. Is it still a big part of the culture, all these characters and comic books and cartoons and things like that?
They've made the Mahabharata into a TV series twice or thrice already.
Yes. So everybody knows who these characters are. So for us Westerners, we have a cultural gap, but they're not important. They're not important in knowing who they are. In the larger frame of the story, yes, they're important. But in Gita, the two characters we want to focus on are Arjuna, who's the commander-in-chief of the army, and his boyhood friend, who becomes his charioteer, Lord Krishna. So a modern day parallel, it would be like General Mattis or General McChrystal is out on the battlefield and Jesus is his Jeep driver. So it's a little shocking, and was for the people of that time. The reason why this relationship is put forward in Gita and why it's so marvelous is there has always been an element in Indian culture, really got expanded when Buddhism came about, of monasticism. This idea that in order to realize God, you had to leave the world, take sannyas. And even before the formal orders that Shankara founded, this idea of leaving the world was part of the spiritual tradition. What Gita shows us, because Arjuna is not going to become a monk. He's a man of action, as Swamiji used to say. So this is a radical story. Swamiji used to say it's for the man of realization downtown. You see. So there's no need for us to leave our world. We're going to learn how to be yogis in the midst of our duties in the world. You can be a householder. Arjuna had a very strange marriage. He had one wife, but she had 5 husbands. Very, very strange. Now, what is the issue here? The issue is the disintegration of the human personality. The first chapter is titled The Yoga of Arjuna Grief. What is Arjuna's problem? And we're going to look at the human being in a tripartite map. Very many different maps. But we all have a physical nature, a body, which is impelled by the force of our past. The dharma of the body is karma. You're going to find yourself doing things, acting in the world, impelled by the force of the past. If you're an animal, that's not problematic. A dog can't do anything else but be dog. A tiger can't do anything else but be tiger. Human beings have got a more complex situation because we have our nature, then the mind comes in, and we have judgment and attraction and aversion. Our feelings get in there. Fear. We put the brakes on. And then the intellect, the buddhi, comes in. And there we have doubt. So, for example, Sheila, if you get a job offer, you may have this situation.
Yes.
Your karma is you've got to go to work and get a job. And then the mind comes in. Am I going to be happy here? Will they be good people to work with? Oh, will I be too far away from my mother? You know, what about my friends in the Bay Area? Sound familiar?
Very much, yeah.
Then the intellect comes in and says, oh, what if I fail? What if it turns out to be bad? I've made the wrong decision and I should have taken that other job instead of this one. So you see, Arjuna's condition is exactly the kind of situation that we all experience. Mother, I don't know your name, Mother. Do you have a name?
Yes, Lakshmi.
All right, Adio. So you've got kids. So you're thinking about perhaps getting them married, right?
Yeah.
And then you know they're young people. They really ought to be married before they get themselves in some trouble. You know what I mean. We won't go any further into that. But,
Yes.
you know, is he going to be a boy who's nice to her? You know,
Yeah.
Will he be kind? Will he make enough money? Will they get along well together? You know those feelings. Then all of a sudden the doubt. Did we make the right choice? Should we have found my daughter a different husband? Da, 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 da. Does this sound familiar? How many Indian mothers go through this?
I'll go through that, yeah. It's familiar.
So Arjuna's problem is the problem we all have. So the fundamental purpose of Gita, Krishna is going to enlighten Arjuna right there on the battlefield. The end result, we just finished the last verse a few weeks ago. And at the very end, he says, my doubts are cleared. I'm clear as to my duty. Charge! And off he goes to the war. So his karma, what we would call swadharma, the law of his being, and his mind, and his intellect are all going in the same direction. We hear the metaphor, ride the horse in the direction it's going. This makes us powerful people in the world. Krishna will later say, this knowledge makes you master of this world and the beyond. Doesn't mean after you study Gita, you're going to run off to a mountain and avoid life. If that's what your thing is, you'll feel free to do it. But if you're prarabdha, like the law of your life that was written before you came in, is be an ordinary person. Get a job, get married, have a family, have friends. That's not inconsistent with deep abidance in the self. Any questions about this and the very unique position Gita has in the literature? So in other scriptures, we have this monastic kind of ideal with characters like Nachiketas in the very, very famous Kathopanishad. Young boy, totally renounced, goes to the halls of death, sits there for 3 days. But remember, we also have characters like King Janaka, Sita's father, man of the highest wisdom, who fought his wars, had a harem of wives, had money, ministers, did all the things kings are supposed to do. So the external is not the issue. It's an inside job. So that's what the problem is that Gita is intended to solve. It's very practical. Now let's talk a little bit about structure. So chapter 1 sets forward the problem, the yoga of Arjuna grief. Chapter 2 is kind of the table of contents chapter. What Vyasa does is he sets forth very brief pen strokes, all the major ideas that he's going to cover. Then he goes all the way back to the basics. In chapter 3, we start with Karma Yoga. Make our way through. Some commentators have divided Gita into 3 sections of 6 chapters each, corresponding to the great Mahavakya Tattvamasi. That thou art, you are that. First 6 chapters is about you. Second 6 chapters is about the infinite, Tat. And the last 6 is Asi. How they are the same. How we, in truth, have that divine spark, identity within each one of us. All right, that's pretty much all I have to say on background, history, stuff like that. Anybody have any questions? let's start and get into the text. So would you be so kind as to chant the first verse, and then we need someone also to read the English.
Okay. Dhritarashtra uvacha dharma kshetre kurukshetre samaveta yudhsavaha mamaka pandavascheva kimakurvata sanjaya.
And the English?
Yes, you are.
Okay.
Go ahead, read the English as well.
What did the sons of Pandu and also my people do when desirous to fight? They assembled together on the holy plain of Kurukshetra.
So it starts Dhritarashtra Uvaja. So Dhritarashtra says, and he's talking to the sage Sanjaya. So this sets the frame. Tell me the story. Tell me what's going on. Verse 2, please. Can't hear you. I think you're muted.
Yes.
Sanjaya uvacha drishtva tu pandapanikam vyudham duryodhanastada acharya upasangamya raja vachanam abravit.
And the English?
Having seen
No, wait, say Sanjana said first.
Sanjaya said, having seen the army of the Pandavas drawn up in battle array, King Duryodhana then approached his teacher Drona and spoke these words.
So now we have the heroes of the armies. They're going to be introduced to us, and we're going to also hear about their bows and their conches and all that sort of stuff. Go ahead. Next verse.
Yes.
Pasyaitam panduputranam acharya mahatim chamum vyudham drupadaputrena tava sishyena dhimata. Behold, O teacher, this mighty army of the sons of Pandu, arrayed by the son of Drupada, thy wise disciple.
So,
Okay.
there across on one side of the battlefield are the Pandavas, the sons of Pandu. And he says, look at those. Next one.
Pasyaitam panduputranam acharya mahatim chamum vyudam drupadaputrena tava sishyena dhimata. That's what I just read.
You read that. Yeah, this next one.
Atra shura maheshvasa bhimarjuna samayudhi yudhano viratascha drupadascha maharatha. Here are heroes, mighty archers, equal in battle to Bhima and Arjuna, Yudhana, Virata, and Drupada, each commanding 11,000 archers.
Okay, so let's talk about a little bit of the relationship problems that Arjuna, our hero, was going to face. So he was raised in the palace with his cousins. So he knows these people. In that way, it was very much like the American Civil War, where you had brother against brother or cousin against cousin. But more than that, because of vows of loyalty, Arjuna is going to face his own archery teacher and his own grandfather. Let's see if I can use a modern example of this. Okay, so those of you who know American Civil War history, one of the greatest generals of the Civil War in the South was a general named Robert E. Lee. He was a Virginian. And he was a West Point graduate. So he was revered in the United States Army. But he felt his loyalty was to Virginia more than it was to the United States. So he chose to fight for the Confederacy. But as the result, he had to do battle with people he'd gone to West Point with, neighbors, people who cared for one another. So Arjuna is going to be facing a very similar situation. Now, why does Vyasa make it so complicated? The reason is, in our lives, it's rarely black and white. Most of our situations are nuanced. There's shades of gray. So going back to Sheila looking for a job. So it's a really good company, and you like the co-workers. You seem to be getting along with the boss, but you realize after you've been there a while that, oh, these people are unethical. Do I just not pay attention? Or do I say or do something? These sorts of things come up in business all the time. What do you do if you find out all of a sudden your manager's doing cocaine? Do you ignore it? Do you keep your mouth shut because you're a subordinate? Is your loyalty to the company? Is your loyalty to the manager? My point here is, in life, the right thing to do is rarely clearly black and white. It all depends on from what level you look at things. True story. So in the Chinmaya mission, many years ago, there was a young man who was from Mexico. And his father was an attorney, and he had just passed the bar to become an attorney in Mexico. And he was asking Swamiji, he said, in Mexico, the legal system is corrupt. And in order to win your case, you have to bribe the judge. And that's unethical. It's dishonest. Should I bribe the judge? Isn't that an interesting question? This was Swamiji's answer. He said, of course you should. Because where is your duty? Duty is to your client. If you don't want to participate in an unethical system, maybe you shouldn't be a lawyer in Mexico. But you don't assuage your own conscience at the expense of your client. Your duty is to look out for your client. Isn't that an interesting answer? I've had many people argue with that answer that Swamiji gave. But my point is, life isn't always neatly black and white. How do we make these choices? How do we make these decisions? So now Vyasa, our poet, is setting up the problem here. So we've got Arjuna and the Pandavas on one side. We've got the Kauravas on the other side. By the way, the Kaurava army is bigger. And they've got some pretty awesome heroes in it. So it's intimidating too. Going on, next verse.
Wait,
Okay,
start again.
Okay. Drishtake Kashirajasya Viryavan Purujit Kunti Bhojasya Shaibhyasya Narapungavaha. Drishtaketu, Chekitana, and the valiant king of Kashi, Purujit and Kunti Bhoja, and Saibhya, the best of men.
So here he's listing names. Hrishikeshu is one of the nicknames for Krishna himself. It means he who has his hair piled on top of his head. And so this again is a list of heroes. Next one, please.
Yudha Manyusya Vikranta Uttabhaujasya Viryavan Saubhadro Draupadeyasya Sarvaiva Maharataha. The strong Yudhyamanu and the brave Uttamajus, the son of Subhadra and the sons of Draupadi, all of them divisional commanders.
Yes, so you've got heroes on one side, heroes on the other side. So here Sanjaya is enumerating who these characters are. And again, these are well-known figures for Hindus. Those of us who are Westerners, we don't have the mythological background, and I'm not going to go into it because it's not necessary for the deeper teaching of the Gita. Going on, please.
Asmakam tu visishta yetani bodhadvijottama nayaka mama sainyasya sangyarthatam bravimite. Know thou, O best, know also, O best among the twice born, the names of those who are the most distinguished amongst ourselves, the leaders of my army. These are named to thee for thy information. So now he's going to enumerate those, the dude on the Kaurava side, Duryodhana, is the guy who's now going to be, those people are enumerated. Go ahead, next one. Bhavan Bhimasya Karnasya Kripasya Samintijaya Ashwathama Vikarnasya Saumadattistavataevacha. Yourself and Bhishma and Karna and also Kripa, the victorious in war, Ashwathama, Vikarna, and so also the son of Somadatta. So again, these are characters that figure in the Mahabharata. Who knows the story of Karna? Anybody remember what Karna did? Yeah. He's the one who hated Krishna so badly, didn't he?
I don't know about his hatred for Krishna, but I do know that he was born out of wedlock to one of the Pandava moms, and she set him afloat in a river, and he was found by a charioteer and raised by him under royal auspices. But generally, I don't know about his hatred for
Was he the one that had to build the little statue of Drona to learn archery? That wasn't Karna, was it?
Yeah, that was Karna. Yeah, that was him.
That was Karna. Okay.
Yeah,
so he wasn't permitted to study archery because he was a bastard, basically. So he built a little model, a little doll of the great archery teacher, Drona, and learned and practiced archery. What would Drona have said? What would Drona have said? But one of the neat things about that story is even in yoga, it's the intention of the student where all the power is, not in the teacher. All right, going on. Anyecha bahava shura madarthetya
Tyakta jivitaha nana shastra praharnaha sarve yudha visharadaha, and many other heroes, also who are determined to give up their lives for my sake, armed with various weapons and missiles, all well skilled in battle.
Yes, so again, saying there are more heroes ready to fight. Next one.
Aparyaptam tadasmakam balam bhishma bhirakshitam paryapta tvada me tesham balam bhima bhirakshitam. This army of ours, defended by Bhishma, is insufficient, whereas that army of theirs, defended by Bhima, is sufficient. Or, this army of ours, protected by Bhishma, is unlimited, whereas that army of theirs, protected by Bhima, is limited.
So it depends on how you pull apart the Sanskrit. There is classically two ways to interpret this verse. The whole idea is we think our army's better than theirs. And we have more soldiers, we're stronger. Going on.
Ayaneshu cha sarveshu yatha bhagamavasthitaha bhishmameva bhirakshantu bhavanta sarvayeva hi. Therefore do you all, stationed by your respective positions in the several divisions of the army, protect Bhishma alone.
So the idea here is Bhishma is there and he's got a standard. And you want to, because he's the head general, the head warrior, you want to protect him. So this was kind of feudal fighting in that way. So everybody keep an eye out. Don't let him fall. Don't let his banner fall. Next one.
Yes, Sanjanaya Kuru Vriddha Pitamaha Sihanadam Vinasdyosche Shankad Dadmo Pratapavan. This one, right? His glorious grandsire Bhishma, the oldest of the Kauravas, in order to cheer Duryodhana, was wounded aloud. Now sounded aloud a lion's roar and blew his conch.
So the warriors would make noise to intimidate the enemy. This was a standard military technique in ancient hand-to-hand combat. Another place where you used to find making noise to intimidate the enemy was, of all places, the Scots in the northern British Isles. So the bagpipe was initially an instrument that would make a horrendous racket to terrify the enemy. So what they have here are these conch shells that they would blow. They would sound much like trumpets. You find them in ancient Jewish culture. You would find them blowing a ram's horn. Again, the idea was to intimidate the enemy with loud noise. Going on.
Bhishma on a bed of arrows in the battlefield?
Say again.
Bhishma, was he lying down on a bed of arrows?
Bhishma was there on the battlefield, yes.
But he was lying on a bed of arrows.
Not yet.
Not yet, okay.
Oh, not yet. That happens later. Right now, he's in his chariot. He's blowing his horn.
Okay. Tata Sankasha Bhairyashva Panavanaka Gomukha Sahasaiva Bhyanyanta Sashabdastu Mulo Bhava. Then followed Bhishma, conches and kettle drums, tabors, drums and cow horns blazed forth quite suddenly, and the sound was tremendous.
So you find also, did I cut you off? Is there more?
No.
So you find also drums as an instrument for intimidation among ancient peoples. So you hear they had kettle drums and tabors. Tabors are pretty much a European instrument, so I don't know what kind of drum it was. But the idea was drums of various sizes. And again, you find the Native Americans would use drums as part of their intimidation for war. So these were all various techniques to try to intimidate the opposing army. Going on.
This is not right. Yeah. Tatashvaitai har yukte mahati sanyadane stitau madhava pandavasyeva divyo shanki pradam madhu. Rishikesha.
Not right here.
Oh, here. Then also Madhava and the son of Pandu, seated in their magnificent chariot, yoked with white horses, blew the divine conches.
So now on the Pandava side, Rishikesha, who's Krishna, he drives the chariot, has these beautiful white horses. Now, we're a little bit of a side here. Who can tell me of an earlier scripture where we get the chariot as a mystic symbol? Anybody remember it? Kathopanishad.
What about it, Jim?
It's a symbol where the sense organs are the horses, mind is the chariot, and you've got the higher intellect as the charioteer. That all comes from Kathopanishad. And here Vyasa is going to lift this metaphor, this symbol. So yes, in war you have war chariots, but this chariot's going to have a mystical, symbolic meaning as we go deeper into the scripture. So I'm just saying that in your mind, put a little star. Oh, chariot. Watch out for what the chariot means. Going on.
Ashajanya Rishikesha Devadatta Dhananjaya Poundradhamma Mahashankar Bhima-karma Vrukodaraha. Rishikesha blew the Panchajanya, and Dhananjaya, Arjuna, blew the Devadatta and Vikrodara Bhima, the doer of terrible deeds. Below,
so here, all these conches have names. I'm sorry, I cut you off.
No, it's okay.
This blew the great conch named
Poundra.
Poundra, yes. And that's to intimidate the Kauravas. So they were saying, well, you made a lot of noise, we can make a lot of noise too. So again, this is just the description of these two armies. Swamiji used to call this word painting. So the idea is to evoke this mental image of this plain. And you see these two armies, and it's very quiet. But all of a sudden, the Kauravas erupt with this horrendous noise. Nobody moves yet. The Pandavas are quiet. And all of a sudden, they erupt with this huge noise. Now let's see what happens.
Ananta Vijayam Raja Kunti Putro Yudhishthiraha Nakula Sahadevasya Sudosha Mani Pushpakao. King Yudhishthira, the son of Kunti, blew the Ananta Vijaya. Nakula and Sahadeva blew the Sugosha and the Mani Pushpaka.
So again, we've got the list of these heroes and their battle conscience. Going on.
Kasyasya Parameshvasaha Shikhandicha Maharataha Drishtadumno Viratascha Satvakischa Parajitaha. The king of Kashi, an excellent archer, Shikhandi, the mighty commander of 11,000 archers, Drishtadumna, and Virata and Satyaki, the unconquered.
And again, he's making reference to these other people. So the first chapter is connective tissue to the rest of the epic poem. We haven't really gotten into the teaching yet. We're still advancing the plot as it's moving along towards this terrible war. Going on.
Drupado Draupade Yasya Sarvasya Prithivipate Saubhadhasya Mahabahu Shankadhamu Dhamma Pratak, yeah, this one. Drupada and the sons of Draupadi, O Lord of the earth, and the son of Subhadra, the mighty armed, blew their respective conches.
Yes, so again, more heroes blowing their horns. Is your voice giving out, dear?
No.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Maybe.
We've got about another 5 minutes. Can your voice last that long?
Yes.
All right. You want some water?
Yeah.
No, I'm fine.
All right.
Ragosho dhatra rashtranam hridayani vedarayat namasya prativim chaiva tumulo vyanunadayan. That tumultuous sound rent the hearts of the people of Dhritarashtra's party and made both heaven and earth reverberate.
So, this tumultuous sound strikes the hearts of the Kauravas. They're all going, oh my God, what did we get ourselves into here? And mind you, they know at a very deep level that they're in the wrong. So they have fear. They know that they're only hanging on for the sake of power, not righteousness. Next one.
Atra vyavistha tastrashtva dhartarashtran kapidvajaha pravrutte shastra sampate dhanurudyamya pandavaha rishikeshan tadavakya midamaha mahipate. Then seeing the people of Dhritarashtra's party standing arrayed and the discharge of weapons about to begin, Arjuna, the son of Pandu, whose ensign was a monkey, took up his bow and said these words to Krishna, Rishikesha, O Lord of the earth.
Now, note that here, Arjuna is to this point, behaving as a man of action. He's going to just give an order to Krishna, and we'll see what happens. So do the next one, and he'll say, take the chariot in between the arms.
Arjuna uvacha sena yor madhye ratham stapaya mechutta. Arjuna said, in the midst of the two armies, place my chariot, O Achyuta.
So he wants to be able to see more clearly. So you have to imagine this battlefield, this huge army on one side and a huge army on the other side. Arjuna's acting very fearless. He says, take my chariot between the two armies. Aren't you afraid of getting shot? I'm not worried about it. I want to see what's going on. I want to see what's arrayed against me. What are the forces? What's my battle plan? So he's acting in a sane way at this point. Now let's see what happens.
Yavadetantirikshena yoga kamana vastitan kaimarya sahayodyam yodyam masti ranasa mudyame. That I may behold those who stand here, desirous of fighting, and on the eve of this battle, let me know with whom I must fight.
So he's not really clear about the faces over there. They're just little tiny uniforms and stuff. So he wants to see, who am I fighting against? All right, next one.
Yotyasya mana vekna veksheham yatetram samagataha dhatarashtrasya durbhadde yurde priya kirshatavaha. For I desire to observe those who are assembled here for the fight, wishing to please in battle the evil-minded sons of Dhritarashtra.
So right now, no problem. He's given the reason. He wants to scope out who he's going to be fighting against. Going on.
Sanjaya uvacha eva mukto hishikesho godakeshena bharata sena yora bhayo madhye Sapayitva Rathottama. Thus addressed by Godakesha, O Bharata, Rishikesha, having stationed the best of chariots between the two armies.
So, Krishna does what Arjuna says. He giddy up, and he drives the chariot in between the two armies. Next one.
Bhishma Dronam Brahma Mukhata Sarvesha cha Mahikshitam Uvacha Partha Paschetan Samavetam Kuru Niti. In front of Bhishma and Drona and all the rulers of the earth, he said, O Partha, behold these Kurus gathered together.
So, this is the first teaching of the Lord. This is the first teaching of the Lord. The exoteric reading is, look at these armies. But remember, in the introductory comments, I talked about where is the battle of Kurukshetra? It's within our own hearts. So here we can think of Krishna as the highest wisdom in us. And what it invites us to do is look. Plato puts in the mouth of Socrates, the unexamined life is not worth living. Are we living our lives from the viewpoint, I'm at the effect of circumstances? It's people, places, things, and conditions. I'm a victim of people out to get me. I'm unhappy and miserable, and it's not my fault. I'm not responsible. I do not dare look at myself. I can blame other people. I can blame politics. I can blame the weather. So the higher wisdom in us, the first thing it says is, look. What's going on in your life? Are you really unsatisfied? And are you covering that up with busyness, with buying things, with working too hard, with achieving things at work. Look, is there love in your life? Do you have meaningful work? Do you have a sense of purpose in your life? Do you have joy in your life? Look. It may be scary, oftentimes is. I don't want to look. I don't want to look. It's too scary. But this is the first teaching of the Lord. Be woke AF, as the young people say. See what's going on. Now, this is going to push a button in Arjuna. And he's going to get triggered, as we like to say in modern times. And he's going to react to this initial teaching. All right, this is a very good place to stop. What verse did we complete? What?
25, verse 25.
Verse 25, all right. So now we have about 10 minutes to do questions and answers. Again, for people who are brand new, this is the edition of the Gita we will be using. Is the camera picking it up? Can you all see it? Yes?
Not really.
Is that better?
It's a little bit too dark. Is it the Srimad Bhagwad Gita by Swami Dayananda Saraswati?
No, this is called Holy Gita by Swami Chinmayananda.
Ah, okay.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
But you can get it on Amazon. It's also in an e-format. And I would recommend you use that translation. There's a great diversity in the way different commentators and translators approach Gita. But this is the one translated by my guru. I'm sure the Dayananda Swami one is just fine. I have great respect for him. But if you haven't got one, this is the one I would recommend that you get. All right, do we have any questions? It doesn't have to be about the material we covered tonight, but or it could be on anything you wish.
Could you just repeat, because I got blank. Who is Sanjaya here?
Who's what?
Sanjaya.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear.
Yeah, she's asking who is Sanjaya. Just a technical question.
Sanjaya is the court seer. He's the court sage. So you got to imagine that they're back at the Kaurava palace. And Dhritarashtra is blind. And of course that has symbolism because it means he doesn't see the truth. He doesn't see what's real. And it's a literary device. So the fellow Sanjaya is a sage who's there at the court who has special yogic powers. He's what we would call a clairvoyant. He can see what's happening at a distance through his yogic powers. So Dhritarashtra has asked him, tell me what's going on the battlefield. And it isn't important that he's a clairvoyant. It's a literary device, so there's an excuse for Sanjaya to be able to relate the story.
Okay, thank you.
Did that make it a little clearer?
Yes, yes.
Yes. He's not an important character in the story. He's just the describer of it all. Have you ever watched Shakespeare plays?
I studied them, but.
All right, so a very traditional Shakespeare device, because they didn't have fancy sets at the Globe Theater. Someone will come in and they'll say, oh, King Henry is out there on the field and the armies are there and he was riding his horse and his horse got shot out from underneath him and he was falling down in the mud. You see, so what the soldier does who's come in, he's only there to describe what's going on.
Okay.
To paint the scene. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So it's a standard literary device is what it is. That's all the only function he fulfills. Any other questions? So we've got Dhritarashtra and Sanjaya. We won't hear from them hardly at all after this first chapter. They come back again in the last chapter. They appear very briefly in a couple of the internal chapters. But after a while, we don't hear from them at all. The rest is just a dialogue between Krishna and Arjuna. So after we've set the scene with all these armies, Arjuna says, drive the chariot out there. I want to see who we have to fight. He's thinking like a general. And Krishna says, behold these armies now arrayed. And again, that's symbolic. Because remember, the battle of Kurukshetra is inside our own hearts. And the first thing the teacher says, the teacher within us, is pay attention. What's going on with you? Are you not getting along with your spouse? Do you hate your job? Do you have ways of relating to your friends? I was talking with a student, and in her family, the way to resolve conflict is we're not speaking to these people. They cut people out of their lives. I'm not speaking to so-and-so. And then they wonder why they're alone. So all sorts of issues in our lives. But the first teaching is pay attention. What are you feeling? What's going on? Took us, 24 verses to get there. But that's the first teaching. We can actually give you an exercise to do based on this. It's called Watch Your Mind. Take on the attitude of the witness, what we call Sakshi Bhava. Live in the higher intellect. One of the things you can do when feelings come up, name them, because that immediately has a gap. So, for example, Sheila, I don't mean to be picking on you, but we were just talking before class, you know. For those others of you, Sheila's looking for a job. So if you go for an interview or you get scheduled for an interview, if you get frightened, pretty normal, but you can watch that. Oh, look, fear coming up. Well, just don't eat chocolate. Notice what it is. What am I afraid of? Afraid they won't like me. You know, I won't be good enough. Just notice the material. Notice the material. A spouse says something unkind and hurts your feelings? Do you want to punish? Oh, look at that. That's kind of interesting. I'm fully capable of wanting to punish the people I love because I'm hurt. All sorts of things. But what the yogi needs to do is be conscious of what's going on. Any thoughts on this? Any questions? All right, we'll meditate. We have 15 minutes left. And for the beginning class tonight, I think we'll do a guided meditation. And then we'll continue with all this next week. So if you can, just find a way to sit and be comfortable with your spine straight, your hands in an open, comfortable position in your lap. Your eyes closed. And let's pay attention to the breath. Inhale. And exhale. We're going to do a little pranayama to help us slow down a bit. We're going to inhale to the count of 4, hold to the count of 4, then exhale to the count of 4 and relax. So let's inhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 2, 3, 4. Relax, 2, 3, 4. Inhale deeply, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 2, 3, 4. Relax, 2, 3. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 2, 3, 4. Relax, 2, 3. Now just let the breath come naturally. Let the breath go deep, all the way down to your hips. Turn away from any problems of the day, sounds outside. Take on the viewpoint of the uninvolved witness of our minds. As thoughts and feelings arise, we just simply notice them. We don't judge them. We don't suppress them. We don't want to get caught up, though, in the theme of our thinking. As thoughts arise, just let them go. Bring your attention back to the breath. If you have a sensation in your body or a feeling, you can notice it in your mind and name it. You don't have to do anything, just notice it. For example, I've got a little pain in my left shoulder. I just notice it. No judgment. Feel a little tired. Just notice it. Feeling peaceful, just notice it. No effort to control, just watch. Let the thoughts and feelings go by like a river. You stay on the bank. Witness the Sakshi. You find your mind wandering, just bring it back to the breath. Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vishishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Sri Guru Pyo Namah. Hari Om.